Hello. My name is Kim Addis, and I'm the president and founder of Frame of Mind Coaching. And you have just joined the Frame of Mind Coaching podcast, where we invite leaders from all over the world to come onto the show and get coached live and in person. Today, I am over the top excited to have with me not just any guest, but I have the CEO of the WBECS Group. Her name is Marva Sadler, and I have to tell you, I'm super honored to have her on my podcast. Marva, welcome.
Thank you, Kim. I'm so happy to be here. I'm really looking forward to this conversation because the introductory conversation we had was just so lovely.
So let's tell those of you who have, those of them out there who have no idea what WBECS is. What is WBECS? Who do you serve? How do you serve them? And how did you become the CEO?
So starting with the easy part, WBECS stands for World Business and Executive Coach Summit. We do two major things. We are the provider of the world's leading global, virtual, live, online summit for professional coaches annually. We run that in June for 3 weeks. It's completely free of charge. Last year, we had 50,000 people.
Wow.
Who attended. We have a total of about 50 sessions, and those sessions are content sessions, live coaching demonstrations, panel discussions from the world's greatest coaching and leadership thought leaders. And it's a very exciting event. We actually invented the Global Virtual Summit because 10 years, 11 years ago when we started it, it didn't exist. We found that it was a really good format to have last year when the COVID pandemic hit. Suddenly, virtual summits became all the rage, and we were, among the pioneers. So we benefited from all of the experience we already had. In addition to that summit, we also run a version of it that is an annual, the full summit, which are 90-minute presentations by these same global thought leaders every week for the course of the year, starting in July and going through May. And it's really probably the easiest, most cost-effective coach education that's available out there in the marketplace. It qualifies for continuing education credits from both the ICF and the EMCC, as well as other coaching associations. WBECS is an independent organization. We're not directly affiliated with any of the associations, but our mission is to raise the global standard of coaching by democratizing coaching education, making it making really high quality education available to everyone, regardless of their geographic location or economic status. So we last year introduced global pricing so that people in first world countries pay a different price, a higher price than people in less developed parts of the world or parts of the world where the coaching is less developed. The other thing we do is that we select from those speakers every year a couple of programs to run with leading thought leaders, specifically on coach education, improving coaching skills, improving your capabilities as a business or executive coach. And this spring, we'll be running our first ever business development program, which is specifically aimed at teaching coaches how to do a better job of developing and running their businesses for success.
And that is so important because what I have found being in the coaching industry for quite a while is that is definitely a weak spot for coaches. There are a lot of very, very skilled coaches who have a hell of a time trying to grow their businesses because that does not come naturally to them.
Well, for many of them, they're actually afraid of even thinking about sales or business development because they're afraid that it will somehow taint their reputation as a coach. And so what we've done is we've partnered with literally the world's best coaching business development people. So they're not your typical kind of online business development, form a funnel, get people in.
Yeah.
They are coaching experts who have focused on business development, and they really focus on how to do a high quality, high integrity job so that you stay authentic with yourself and with your coaching approach.
So, so important. So
Yeah,
how
we're
did you,
really excited about it.
I'm excited about it too. I've been coaching and trying to grow my business for the past 16 years. And while business development isn't exactly my Achilles heel, there's always room for improvement. There's always room for growth. That is 100% for sure.
Well, we
Um,
did a survey to our database of, 200,000 people, and 75% of the respondents said that getting more clients was their number one business opportunity.
yeah,
And
I'm
so we're starting with what we're calling the 30-day quick start challenge, where we're saying, learn how to get new clients in 30 days. And it's an introductory way for people to become more comfortable and familiar with the concept of it's really okay to go get new clients.
Yeah, this is such an important message. So, how did you get involved with WBECS? Like you mentioned that you're not a coach. So, how did you get involved in the coaching world and how did they enroll you to be such an important leader?
Well, I have been very fortunate in my career. I am not a coach, but I have been associated with a lot of coaches. I spent several years as an executive of corporate training companies, first Achieve Global, which now is part of Korn Ferry, and also as an executive vice president at Franklin Covey, which is one of the leading global corporate training companies worldwide. And so we were kind of second cousins to coaches. I spent a lot of time in professional services, and I've always really admired coaches. 2.5 years ago, almost 3 years ago, my coach came to me. She called me and she said, Marva, I have this job description in my hand, which is the job you've been waiting for, that you've been working yourself towards for the last 20 years. And my coach actually has known me for 20 years because we worked together at Franklin Covey. And so I respect her a great deal. And I said, okay, I'm willing to talk about it, but I'm really happy where I am. I was the CEO of a tech strategy consulting firm,
Mm,
right up my alley. It was consulting, it was tech, it was strategy, it was kind of the best of all worlds. And I was really happy where I was. I had equity. I was growing the business about 50% a year. And she said, no, you really need to be serious about this. So I took a look and um, I decided that I would apply just to see what happened. And I, after a while, I got back and noticed that out of 500 applicants, I had been chosen as one of the top 100, and that the next round was, and I don't even remember what the next round was. I think it was a 20-minute video that I needed to do and answer several questions. And I had to call my son and say, come teach me how to do a video on on my computer, because he does tech support. And at the time I told him, darn it, they just turned this into a competition. I've never been able to resist a competition. All I have to do is be in the top half and I'll get into the next round. It was kind of like, the world's got talent, or, something. And so,
right.
so we went
You're
through
on
an
Survivor.
exactly. We went through an 8-month process of one round after the next. And at the end of this 8 months, I actually got into the top, I think it was eight, and got interviewed by the members of the leadership team and went through that process. And I decided at that point, I really need to get serious about whether I'm serious about this. Because up until then, it had been more that I was enjoying the process and I was observing what they were doing and I was finding it very interesting. And at that point, I decided to get serious about it. And I did a, typical Ben Franklin balance sheet where what are the pros? What are the cons? What do I really want to be doing? And it was eye-opening to me that I realized that my coach was right,
Mm,
that this was the
that'll
position
happen.
that, they are a lot of the time. And she knows me well. And this was truly the position I had been looking for and preparing myself for 20 years. And I realized that with everything I'd been doing in my career, what I really cared about was personal development
Mhm.
and really helping people achieve their potential. And that from a personal point of view, I was really worried about the world in general, about the loss of civil discourse, and about the fact that we had so much rhetoric and ranting that was going on, and so little kind of rational discussion where people could find common ground. And as I did the analysis, I thought, well, our political leaders clearly can't help us do that because they're actually taking us in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And our religious leaders no longer have the pervasive influence to be able to do that over a large enough population. And so my conclusion was, if there's anyone who has any hope to help us do this, it's coaches who have influence over business leaders. Because business leaders, if they really think about it, are highly motivated to civil discourse because it works. It's more effective, it's more productive, it leads to growth, it leads to opportunity.
More
And
profitable.
it's more profitable, absolutely. And coaches are the people who can teach business leaders how to do that. And that's how I ended up here. I realized that I'm at a stage in my career where what I really care about is leaving a legacy. And that, I had done a lot of other things in my life, but I was ready to do something that was about more than just helping an entrepreneur make his business more successful so he could sell it for more money.
Right.
And so that's why I'm here.
So what's interesting about this story, I mean, I love the story, but what's interesting to me, something that stood out, was the fact that you love the process of competition. So if I
Absolutely.
were to talk to 100 other people, they would say the process wiped me out. The process exhausted me. The process was grueling, whatever. I would hear those words. In your case, you didn't even know if you really wanted in until the last hour.
And I honestly, I feel guilty about that. There's a piece of me that feels like I was being a little bit superficial because I was so fascinated by the process and I was so compelled by the competition. But the truth is that I'm pretty self-aware. I know that about myself, and I never at any time made promises or commitments. But I am also a person who's very open to opportunity, and I believe that I believe that opportunities come to people who are open to seeing them when they arrive. And
Agree.
and so even though I wasn't serious about it in the beginning, I also wasn't rejecting it.
Right. So I'm going to ask you a tricky question, but then we're going to turn the corner. What
Okay.
was the hardest question they asked you throughout the whole entire process?
I think the hardest, it wasn't necessarily the hardest question, but the hardest part of the process was being able to convince them and myself that I really could manage a remote organization, one of completely virtual organization, populated almost entirely by millennials. Because, I'm a baby boomer. And I understand corporate structure and corporate hierarchies and moving up the ladder in a very traditional way. And I understand all the baby boomer cultures and values. And millennials are very different. And these, not only were these millennials, these were international millennials, virtually located, working virtually and independently. And it's a very different world. And so that, I think, was the hardest part, was really being able to convince them and myself that I was going to be able to adapt to that, and that I was going to bring something, even with a whole generation difference between myself and most of the people that I would be working with, that I would bring value to them, that they would actually see and feel fast, so
Mhm.
that they felt like I wasn't just some old person who was trying to tell them what to do in a hierarchical way.
Which brings us to the next part of our conversation. So you're on this podcast, and as you know, what
Uh-huh.
we do is we coach leaders with a challenge. So, it's not a 10-week coaching program. We're not talking every day. You're not journaling every day, as I would normally ask my clients to do. We have one conversation. So, what is your greatest challenge today that you're
It,
willing to talk about on this
uh,
podcast?
okay. My greatest challenge today continues to be how to effectively manage, encourage, motivate, and engage a remote, virtual, independent millennial population,
Okay.
multinational millennial population.
And
And my biggest concern about that is capturing the hearts and minds of millennials is different than capture. It's not about just pay structure or just about promotions, and doing it across multiple cultures increases the complexity. And then doing it during a lockdown when I have not been able to, say, fly to Croatia to meet my 10 team members that are in Croatia, everything
right,
has to be done virtually,
right.
has really, it has really highlighted the issue.
Okay. And it's highlighted the issue. And let's kind of dig in a little bit more. When this is a challenge, how does it show up? How does it appear as a challenge? Are people on calls and they're tuned out? Do they not show up on calls? Like, how do you experience any disengagement, if at all?
That is an excellent question. And it shows up mostly between calls
Okay.
because it's people are very engaged in their
Mhm.
job responsibilities. But job responsibilities are not the only responsibility that you have when you're part of an organization. The the webbing, the networking of the relationships is what holds people together culturally. It can't just be about the job. And it can't just be about the task that is in front of me today, particularly as we've gone through the pandemic. It's about how do we support and nurture the person in Holland all by herself or the Netherlands all by herself, who she and her daughter get COVID and they're both very ill and she's trying to do her job and she's trying to homeschool her daughter and she's finding it incredibly difficult and we can't reach out to that person in a physical way to help her, but how do we reach out in a psychological way, in a cultural way to provide the support that she so badly needs? And that helps to strengthen the organization as a whole as they see that we're very committed to our people. It's that kind of thing that it's the engagement that happens between the assignments that I think is the most challenging part of this.
Okay. So I'm going to throw out some ideas at you,
Mhm,
and we're just going to discuss it uh, and see where it leads us. How's that?
mhm.
So the first thing that pops to my head, is that this is a problem that you're trying to solve. It sounds like a little bit independently. I might be wrong about that.
Part of that has been because I haven't had a people and culture manager for the last several months.
Right, but you
Um,
have you have a team of 70 with all kinds of ideas.
it turns out that I do, yes,
Yes.
and
And
it turns out that tapping into those ideas are really important.
so my first kind of knee-jerk reaction is, let's see what they are looking for. Let's find out.
Mhm.
One, by asking, perhaps by surveying, perhaps by, just engaging in conversation at team meetings. What's the number one thing that would make your job more interesting? Number one thing that would increase your feelings of connectedness, and just ask the question, because that could be different for each individual, based on culture, based on age, based on experience, based on needs, based on everything. So number one is, let's ask. Number two is, I am exposed to many millennials, and I'll tell you one thing that absolutely connects them is storytelling.
Mhm.
And so I think what is interesting, or could be interesting, is creating a buddy system. And a buddy system can be a cohort of two or three or even four people who belong to one group, who are responsible for sharing the stories of one another. And so I feel like responsibility increases when you assign responsibility. If assign responsibility to you for someone else,
Mhm.
now you're taking it more seriously. And if you're responsible for someone else's story, now you're really stepping up, because you have to do some learning, you have to do some sharing, and you have to do some reporting. And so what does that look like? It looks like, hey, we're creating some stories about our team, and you're going to be the creators of those stories because we want to learn about you. We want to learn about each one of you individually. So your job is going to be to interview your cohorts and come back with those stories to share with the rest of the group. So now what's happening is we're not only highlighting the person we're telling the story about, we're highlighting the storyteller.
I love that idea. We formed a buddy system for new hires that was a 90-day part of the 90-day onboarding where we would have a buddy that they would check in. But it hadn't really occurred to me or anybody else yet that the buddy system could be extended over the entire population. And I love your idea of the storytelling. We have an all team meeting every couple of weeks, and we've managed to get that all team, that engagement level up from about 50% to we get about 95% attendance these days, which is,
Awesome.
it's really, really, we're excited about it. And we've done it by being really very intentional about what information we share and making sure that we are highlighting more of the people that they're getting a chance to share one of their accomplishments or something that they're working on that's interesting. I love the idea of adding this, let's introduce somebody. Here's so and so to introduce their buddy. We could keep that going for a really long time. And I love the idea that it engages more people and introduces more people in a very deep and meaningful way.
Yes. So what I like about it is I think millennials like to be challenged. They
Mhm.
like to be offered the opportunity for a little bit of um, attention, a little bit of, um, let's notice you. And so you're getting the twofold noticing, but the process of noticing requires them to build a relationship, to right the in-between calls that you're talking about. So that's one thought and idea that I'm putting forward. And
Yeah,
one of
so
the,
I'm going to just reflect for a minute, if that's okay.
yeah,
That what I'm part of what I'm hearing from you, because I know my team and I know that their first volunteering for that would be, oh yeah, I'll just be buddy to the person I'm actually a buddy to. Um,
yeah,
but what I'm hearing you say is no, we need to cross departments, we need to cross cultures,
cultures,
we need to give people buddy assignments that are not the natural ones that they would gravitate towards. So
100%.
I wanted to make sure that I was hearing that correctly so that I can translate that back to my team.
Yes. So you need to assign the buddies and even the cohorts, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, I,
So
I love that idea. Thank you.
So that's thought number one. Thought number
Uh-huh.
two is this, and I'll just share an experience that I had just a couple of weeks ago that kind of shocked me myself. And the story is that we train coaches in what we call the frame of mind coaching method. And the people we train are all past clients. So they go through our coaching program and they come in for training. And normally the next phase of training happens in person. We call it FOM for frame of
Hmm.
mind methods. But obviously, due to COVID, we did not have an in person event. We had a virtual event and we had a better turnout than we normally do. Who knows why? But in addition to that, I thought, well, we're going to be on Zoom. We normally do this for 4.5 days. That's a lot. Let's narrow it down to 3 days. And the overwhelming feedback was it was not long enough. We wish we had more time, which is a bit shocking to me because I was like, wow, that's going to kill people to be on Zoom for 3 full all day, every day, right? And the
But it's a
outcome was,
better reaction than having people say that was too darn long.
yeah, no, it was amazing. Like it was just incredible. And so some of the things we did that created engagement, yes, we had breakout sessions. Yes, we gave them assignments in their breakout sessions, but we also physically delivered assignments. So in other words, we deployed, right? We mailed boxes to each participant. And in the box were various assignments that they could only open at a certain time. So let's say it was Friday, 2 o'clock, open envelope number 6. what I'm giving you an idea. And in
Mhm.
that envelope was some kind of special assignment that they would need to go into a breakout. And the breakout was pre-assigned. So we would say, okay, John, Mary, Bill, Bob, go into room number 3. And you need to do this assignment. So that would create a connection that was that we could not create otherwise, because they had a physical assignment, which made engagement interesting. Gee, I wonder what's going to be in that envelope. And number 2 is that they had to go and work on it together in a private room. So that's another idea, is to combine, I think, tactile with a virtual experience. When you have that, your engagement goes up. But I'm going to throw one more thing at you.
Okay.
Create cohorts to design those assignments. You can call them team building activities. You could call them culture building, whatever it is you want to do. So now you have a cohort. In the cohort, you might have an American, a Croatian, a person from the Netherlands, whoever, all the people in a group. And their job is to come up with an activity that is unique, that is designed to increase bonding, exposure, thought, fun, whatever it is, to the group. And so now they have a task. There's a little bit of competition because they want their task to be better than anybody else's. They're collaborating, they're coming up with an idea. But what you're really doing is actually increasing the intellectual knowledge and um, toolbox of WBECS,
And the sharing,
and the sharing, of
the
course.
sharing across teams, across cultures. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I hope you don't mind. I'm looking down because I'm writing down these
No,
ideas so
I
I
got
won't
that. I
forget
got
them.
that. Yes,
Okay.
please do. I love that. So
Yeah.
these are just some thoughts, but my greatest overarching thought is they probably have some ideas that we have never thought of.
Yep.
And so you have a whole bunch of resources at your disposal that I would encourage you to tap into.
I'd like to just extend that for just a minute because the minute that you said it, that I was trying to solve it independently, I wanted to, have a V8 moment um, because my temperament profile, every time I've ever taken a temperament profile, no matter which one it is, indicates that I have a very strong independent streak. I like to be in charge. I like to solve problems. I'm fairly introverted. So that is a perfect soup for me trying to solve things independently. And you're absolutely right. That is a great and very helpful insight. I wanted to report I did have a little bit of a breakthrough this morning, and now this will reinforce it. Uh, we're having capacity planning discussions with each of the teams, who do they need, what positions do they need in this new year, so forth. And I had to go to my program team and say to them, guys, I've identified a problem here. I had 6 months ago taken over the program team directly because there was no program director at the time. And I promoted a couple of program managers to be senior program managers, and they're wonderful. But that's a big jump from program manager running an individual program to suddenly running a whole team and then running a whole department. They're not ready to be directors. And yet, I want them to know that I value them and I appreciate all the growth that they've shown. And I don't ever want them to think that I'm disappointed in their growth, but I'm recognizing that they're getting a little too far stressed and
Right.
the, cracks are in the system. And so I went to them today and I said, there's a hole that we need to figure out how to fill. And instead of me coming and telling you that what we need is a program director, I'm telling you there's a hole. You guys are already stretching yourself as far as you can to fill that hole. I'm stretching myself down as far as I can to fill that hole. But what that does is it means there are things that are going unaddressed.
Right.
And there are things that I should be doing strategically that I'm not addressing. Help me figure out how we're going to solve this. And they both said to me, we're so glad you raised this issue because we both had come to a similar conclusion recently. We were going to ask you what more we could do to help you, we love that you opened up the permission for us to have this conversation. And so what I told them was, I'm not going to solve this by myself. The obvious answer, the obvious traditional answer is we need a director.
Yeah.
But that doesn't meet all our needs here. And so I would like you to help me solve this problem. And we walked away with that being a really positive moment. Instead of me trying to dictate a solution to them or solve it myself, I just said, go away and think about it for the weekend. Let's get together again next week and let's really work on what we might do together that will meet all the criteria that we're trying to meet here. And it reinforces what you just said about great people. They have great ideas. Tap into those ideas. Help encourage them to bring them forward instead of feeling like they have to wait till I give them permission.
100%. And what you're doing is you're building the organization that you stand for, right? Like it's consistent. There's consistency there, consistency with the idea of providing coaching and mentorship and watching people grow and collaborate and rise up to their potential. So it's doing all of that. I'm going to throw one more idea at you that I just thought of as you were speaking. And the idea is this, and I don't know if it'll work, but I think it's a good idea. And the idea is that you have a team of 70 people who are all leaders in their own capacity. And you have access to coaches who are more than willing to supply you with any type of assistance that your heart desires. Tap into your coaches to provide programs specifically for your team.
That is a great idea. We have more. So we tried it about a year ago, not exactly that, but we tried having a quarterly assignment where we would view a recording of one of our thought leaders and we would break out into breakout groups and we would talk about it. But what you just suggested adds the personal connection, the live. I mean, we are the first ones to say that the live connection is very different than a recorded connection. And so we run all our programs live, even though they're virtual. And how we miss that is a testament to the fact that we always need to be rethinking what we're doing, because the recorded version wasn't all that compelling. People would say, oh, I can watch it anytime, and they'd miss the breakout session or whatever. If we have a live session with a thought leader specifically designed for us, that then we can talk about what does that mean to us? What can we learn from it? That would be so much more compelling. It's a great idea. I've also written that one down. Thank you.
And I would be the first to volunteer.
Ooh, even better. I will write that down and I will get in touch with you because that would be delightful.
It would be my honor and my pleasure. I'm hoping that this conversation left you with something of value. I'm hoping it kind of tweaked some thought and got you thinking in some different directions.
Honestly, if the only thing that I walk away with is that I don't have to do this by myself and I can ask for ideas from other people, right there is a big light going on that reminds me, that sometimes I need to rethink my own biases and lean out of those biases towards things that will be better for the people as a whole.
Perfect. We did our job then.
We did our job.
I want to say thank you so much for being willing to come onto my podcast, for opening up, for sharing your challenge, for, not just being vulnerable, but just being transparent. I really appreciate it. For those of you who are listening, I hope you took away something of value that you could apply in your organization. And if you have a challenge that you want to share on the podcast, please reach out to me. My email address is kim@frameofmindcoaching.com. And if you have a challenge that you don't want to share on the podcast, but you do want to talk about, please reach out to me as well. My email address is kim@frameofmindcoaching.com. Marva Sadler, the Marva Sadler. Thank you so much for sharing this time with me. It's my honor and my pleasure to have you on this show.
Well, Kim, thank you so much for the invitation and the opportunity. I enjoyed the conversation. I learned and took notes, and this was time well spent. Thanks so much.